Are selling services obsolete because of AI? You bet they are, but let me tell you what we're going to do instead. You aren't 18 months away from needing to start to think about how AI is going to impact your practice. It's happening right now. In fact, when I chat GPT'd, how long is it going to be until functional medicine, naturopathic doctor, whatever your credential, is obsolete because of AI? Do you know what it said? It said, actually, that happened 18 months ago. See, the landscape of how we deliver care is changing rapidly. But the thing is I don't actually think this is all doom and gloom, because the truth is it really wasn't working that well in the first place. AI has an incredible capacity to increase your ability to achieve better results with your patients and be running a more fluid and intelligent practice. What we're going to do today is talk about 3 quick pivots and fixes to your thinking with respect to AI to move you from a place of extinction into a place of great expectations. Here's the first reality that we need to have a look at, and that is the technology of AI actually has an ability to think clinically and think transactionally in a far more cost-effective way than we're able to do in practice. AI hasn't made us obsolete, but what it has done is it started to show us where we actually had cracks in our pre-existing system. See, that transactional model of care where someone comes in and we learn all about them, we give them some supplements and off they go, and then they come back and off they go, and then they come back. Not only does it not work in this current era of how information is processed online, but it never really worked for our practices in the first place. There are associations in North America providing advice around what practitioners should be charging for these transactional models of care. And when we actually sit down and run the numbers, what we see is that for an average practitioner, an average naturopathic doctor running a transactional practice, we know a few things. We know that most patient visits will fall off after 4 contact points. We know that following the guidelines of how to deliver care in a transactional way, using the price guidelines from these associations, the average practitioner needs to acquire 230 plus patients per year simply to be earning $100,000 in income. That model of care, that model of practice, that model of building your business wasn't something that AI broke. It was an opportunity that AI has revealed. The average consumer is not looking for you to sell them their service or to sell you their time. They don't know what to do with it. They don't know how an hour with a functional medicine doctor is going to completely transform their health. They don't understand how to pair the investment of an hour or 2 or 3 hours with you and how that equates to the recovery with their illness. What a patient understands is an individual who knows their disease, someone who commands authority, someone who has a niche, a specialty, an area of focus. And that individual is not going to sell their service or sell their time. That individual knows that what a patient is looking for today, an intelligent health consumer, is they are looking for a transformational outcome. They want to get better and they never want to go back. And to achieve that, that's not going to happen through the sale of your service. It's actually going to happen through the delivery of your strategy. The first fix that we need to consider inside your practice in order to move you from that obsolete model of transactional care into the delivery of better patient outcomes, an easier business model, and more patient flow is to design a signature care system or a methodology. Research with respect to developing personal brands shows that an author of any type, whether that's a New York Times bestselling author or the author of a system or a book that you publish on your own, is actually one of the number 1 ways of commanding authority. When an individual is looking for a practitioner, they're not looking for just anybody. They're definitely not looking for the cheapest. They're looking for the best. They're looking for the expert on their particular condition or concern. When you author your own methodology, what you're essentially doing is architecting and landscaping out the steps that people need to move through from the time they come into your office to when you achieve an outcome. You're probably already delivering a methodology when you're working with your ideal clients. You've just never named it. You've just never choreographed what type of visits need to happen and how long they need to last. You never thought about the kind of content you should put in an online portal that provides background information for those patients. You never thought about it because we got so used to delivering care the old way that we never need to. But as of today, not 18 months from now, not hopefully in 2 years, but as of today, what health consumers are looking for is not the strategy that AI can't deliver. They're looking for the strategy that only you have the capacity to give them. Here's the second move we're going to make. If we start to choreograph what our interactions with patients need to look like, when we start to take them from point A to point Z, when we start to deliver that transformational program, something incredible will happen in your practice. You'll move from having on average 4 touch points with a patient. When we look at all the different types of professions, functional medicine, naturopathic medicine, chiropractic, when you are selling services, the average number of visits that a patient will return for is 4. When we design and architect a signature care system, 2 magical things start to take place. The first is that when patients are sticking around longer, when they understand the plan, once they can see their next steps, they tend to stick around longer. Now, patients sticking around longer achieve not only better patient outcomes, but that retention drives greater profitability in your practice. New patients drive cash flow, retained patients drive profitability. And if we are looking at how do we build an effective business in the era of AI, retention is actually the most overlooked element of what you can be deploying in your practice. If you are a clinic owner looking at a team of associates, one of the things our natural tendency to do is to make them responsible for building their own practice. But let's be honest, the last thing an associate wants to do is sell their services. It's why they joined your clinic in the first place. You as a clinic owner, you've got skin in the game. You've got a brand to attend to. You've got a capacity to articulate the value proposition of your business. Don't leave that to your associates. Put them in charge of something infinitely more profitable in your business and something, frankly, you're not well positioned to do. And that is to be responsible for the retention of those patients. See, once we create that signature care system or methodology, now we have a roadmap for why patients need to stick around longer. It's not a matter of inventing one more reason for a follow-up or now digging into one more random symptom. Now it's a matter of telling them why we have our next touch point and why it is relevant to that outcome that we're both so committed to achieving. When we turn and make our associates responsible for retention, the entire landscape of our business and our patients' health outcomes actually starts to change. Now, one of the resources we wanted to make available to you in response to this particular component of your business is something we call the associate viability calculator. And we've linked that down below. So this is a really cool, totally free tool that you can use to actually look at what happens once we start to retain patients past those 4 visits. We can also start to play around with what happens when we adjust your fees, when we start to play with some of the other key variables when it comes to the deployment in your practice. But it's not just the signature care system, and it's not just the retention. There's one more third component that is a massive and important fix in your practice in the era of AI. The third piece and last piece we're going to focus on, and really, clinic owners, I'm talking to you here, is how we execute our time. See, we can have these big fancy visions of what our clinic is going to be. We're going to have a smoothie bar, and we're going to have a yoga studio, and we're going to have all these things that AI can't replicate. But I want to remind you of something really important. Our vision is super sexy and it feels really good and it's littered with dopamine triggers, but it's execution that really pays the bills. It's execution that's going to drive more money into your practice. And so one of the things that I'm going to encourage you to do as a leader in your business and as a leader in your life is to start to think of your business in 6-week to 12-week sprints. When we start to look at it from the perspective of sprints, it allows us to look at our next step in the growth of our business, our next step in the ascension of our asset. It allows us to start to triage where we need to be taking action and where we need to shelve certain things for the time being. And when we're looking at creating these 90-day sprints, these action-oriented sprints, there's 4 things that we need to focus on. I call these the 4 C's. The first C that we need to look at is clarity. We need real clarity on where we need to take action next. Not the one that feels the best, because no one really can run a business entirely on feelings, but the one that is most aligned to your goals with your business over the course of the next 90 days to the next 12 months. The next C we need to look at is capacity. Do you have the capacity, the energetic capacity, the time capacity to actually bring that project to fruition? And if you don't, who do we need to ask to make it happen? The fourth C is capability. One of the big questions that we really get into once we get to this point of the conversation is, how do I do it? We can't even conceive at bringing these ideas to the table because we don't know how to make it happen. And that's okay. Capability is something you definitely learn by getting in the ring. But one of the things I want you to understand that is, as your business grows, you are less and less responsible for having to be capable of the execution. Your job as the CEO of your business is to allocate resources. And one of the resources you might need to allocate is, where do I need to invest, or who do I need to speak to in order to make this next piece come to fruition? So your job is to set the vision, but when it comes to your actual capability, it might be something for you. It might be something you need to hire out. So you need to assess the capability of yourself or your team to make it happen. And lastly, the last C is conviction. And again, I brought up this idea of, it's really sexy to have the vision and it is really less fun to engage in the execution. But here's where we rally our senses. Here's where we get our physiology involved. And that is around this idea of conviction. Conviction means we feel it in our bones that we want to reach that next level. It's why when we're talking to our clients, we talk about setting key goals and why we want those goals and why we're aiming to hit those milestones. It might be that you want to have a clinic that has massive impact for thousands of people. It might also be that you want to build a leveraged asset where you can travel with your family and still earn an income at the same time. Your conviction, that emotionality behind why you're making these strategic decisions, why you're engaging in follow through, why you're willing to try things you don't know how to do yet today, that is the differentiator between someone who builds something sustainable over the long term and someone who builds something simple and sexy that comes and goes in the different seasons of their life. This is the tough work, thinking about your business differently, but we are in an era right now where we've never had more resources to make it happen. The biggest question we get from people at this point, at this juncture, is, where do I go next? Where do I get the clarity to start to take action in my business? And we got your back on that one. Sitting down in the comments below, we've created a roadmap for you, a workbook to get started on all of these pieces to help navigate the 3 quick fixes to shift the trajectory of your practice, increase revenue and profitability, and to bring you ultimately peace of mind. If you found these pieces helpful, click subscribe below, grab your workbook, and we'll see you inside your practice.